platform where you could enhance your communication and leadership skills. For this International Men's Day, we know that there is a lot of focus when it comes to Women's Day in March. And the Toastmasters Club, we felt it necessary to not just recognize men on the day, but to have a series of events in order to recognize, celebrate, and bring their voice to the fore.
Thank you so much for that. You mind sharing with us as well what is your specific role as the president of the Toastmasters Club in St. Lucia?
My role as president is to ensure that the club maintains its membership, to, of course, bring Toastmasters, the work of Toastmasters across the island, encouraging persons to join, encouraging persons to enhance their communication, not just their public speaking skills, but their leadership skills as well. And so the club in itself, it's not just a standalone, it stems from an international organization. And Toastmasters, like I said, it teaches competencies in these areas. And we're one of 4 clubs on island. And again, our whole focus this month is to have theme meetings, recognize the men within our club, use various platforms to talk about the theme discussion, the topic that we have themed around Men's Day, and even the international theme that gravitates to supporting men and boys.
Okay. And what has that experience been like thus far for you?
My experience as president it's not new because this is the 3rd time I'm operating as the club president. This year on our calendar, we're just bringing more focus to International Men's Day. So this is just an added component. In past years, we would have just a theme meeting ensuring our men will predominantly on our agenda. But this year we took it a step up with a series of initiatives and platforms to give voice to men, help them to communicate. As you know, the stats, the statistics around show that men are less and less in forums, less and less speaking. And so we felt it necessary to bring this discussion and allow them to have a voice as well.
Which is true. And then again, we're looking at, as you mentioned earlier on, what men want. And I think a lot of the times as women, I think we tend to be very judgmental. And especially when it comes to our men in society. And we want to just take time out to say kudos as well to the role models. Continue to inspire, continue to do a good job. And we're not throwing some of you guys under the bus, but then really and truly, I think men need to really embrace their roles in society, because on most occasions you find we, the women, take on the leadership
I
roles,
am not hearing you for
but
some
the
reason.
full responsibilities. I think there was a break in our connection. I just want to apologize to our listeners for that, but we will get right back with you.
Talk shows, and we heard you. 88.5 Super FM presents House Guest, a brand new, fresh fortnightly feature airing at 10 a.m. House Guest will showcase a cadre of professionals, from doctors and entrepreneurs to the next door friendly neighbor. So tune in.
For some reason, I'm not hearing you. Are you hearing me?
For open, frank, and informative discussion. Only on Super FM, your community radio station.
.5 of FM, 13 minutes after the hour. And of course, I would like to apologize for that interruption. However, if you were just joining us there, it is Yvonne, Edwin, Toastmasters Club President. And we were here today to just shed some light on the men ahead of International Men's Day. What men want. And of course, as we continue our conversation looking at men in society, and we do have a few positive role models, those who continue to try and toil and provide for their families as well. And we continue to encourage them to do so. If we were to look at what men want in a nutshell, I would ask of you, Miss Edwin, to just break that down for us, please. A lot of our
Well,
men listening right now.
yes. So I think most of the time there is this societal pressure or perspective that men are just caretakers or men are providers. So I think that stems from one of the myths that has dominated our thinking in society. So men are providers. We've not grasped the concept that even women predominantly indicate or they state that they're independent, yet men are supposed to be providers. So that shift in responsibility is playing a factor in households, in society. And so, are men the sole providers is the question. Are men necessarily the head of their household is another question. And are men always leading? Because if we have to break it down in terms of what we men want, men and women, we have to not isolate the issue of men are providers. They're supposed to lead the household, they're supposed to take charge. Are we women today prepared to allow our men to lead us, to man the household and to provide? And if we look at it only in that context, it means that we should be stay-at-home moms and not pursuing our careers and breaking the glass ceiling. And so because of that shift, this is where this conversation becomes very important in today's society.
Definitely so. And of course, we're encouraging persons to call in to share their comments, their views as well in this insightful conversation. In your view, I want to just ask you, what do you think are the common misconceptions, society has had about our men? And of course, when it comes to their emotional, and if I were to add as well, their mental well-being as well. You find for us women, we are the ones to first take the lead when it comes to our health.
Yes, and this is a very important topic as well because we find that men, they do not speak out. They are not the regular go to doctor check on the health persons. They're the ones that mostly in social settings and not at home getting the relevant sleep they need. But again, they're placed in the workforce on par with women, and sometimes the women outdo them in these environments, not necessarily because they are better, but I think they're not given the opportunity to prove themselves. So when it comes to their health, I think that is where women should take the lead. So this is where the roles of both men and women supposed to be on par, operating from an equal basis. So women may take the lead in certain things, men may take the lead. And I think it just boils down to who has the better strength in one area, who has a weakness, and this is where we offset each other. And so you have a partnership. Women tend to do their regular breast checks. They tend to go to the doctor. Why are we not scheduling those checks for our men, our uncles, our fathers, our grandfathers, not just our partners? But this again is where this shift in roles have contributed to not being able to answer that question, what men want. So before we even move further, what I did was I conducted a social experiment, and a list of questions were posed to men and women, very similar questions. And the results, I must say, is very shocking. So in the men's survey, there were 46 participants in that survey. And when it came to discussing emotional problems or lifelong problems, most of the men in that survey, 56% of them indicated they usually brush off or handle things on their own. The options for that question was whether they would seek counseling, do they have a friend or family member that can offer support, would they go to their partner immediately if they had a problem, or do they drink and smoke their problems away? The predominant answer for those 46 men was that they brush off. So they never see things as issues. They don't seek counseling, they don't go to a doctor, they do not face the life challenges. What they think is that they need to be macho and I can handle it all. So again, this is that paradigm shift that has happened in society where women are strong in that area, but do we offer the support to our partners? So that is probably something for your listeners, because like I said, the survey results, it's not, some of it is not totally surprising. It is some of the things that we may have known already, but it is giving evidence to what society perceive from a man's angle.
Well, definitely. And I strongly encourage our listeners as well to call in and get interactive. And even the men as well to should take the lead in calling us right here for a discourse. Let's hear your views, your concerns as well. And we're not here to pinpoint any finger at anyone, but just an
No.
open, honest conversation as well.
Yes.
Even to that, from your interactions as well, what do you really think men are looking for? I think a lot of the times for us, we can see perhaps that shoulder, that confidence, maybe that support, and even
Support.
to that extent, you find a lot of it boils down to the lack of communication. They're afraid that they're not being understood.
Yes, and that came out, that definitely came out in the survey. In the survey, when the question was asked, what is a man's love language? Predominantly, the responses was quality time, but physical touch stood out in that survey. So 39%, whereas you would think women would gravitate to, always wanting to be touched, PDA, that public display of attention, the men are saying that physical touch is their love language. And again, it brings the other question. Do we do this as partners? Do we love our dads and our uncles and cousins in that regard? Sometimes they need that emotional support from us. A tap on the shoulder is a physical touch. A hug is a physical touch. So it doesn't, again, this survey should not be taken in isolation, that it's just relationships or your partners that requires quality time and physical touch, because these were the two that stood out. They also need that shoulder to lean on, and hugs and kisses and touches of encouragement can provide that. Men sometimes don't feel love. The other area that stood out in the survey was communication gap. The means method of communication between them and society, whether it's in workplace or otherwise, seem to be a communication gap. And that can mean we do not communicate in the language that they understand. We might not be as direct. We might be the ones who are quarreling and nagging and complaining, but not reaching them. And they have identified communication as the gap and the challenge they have in most relationships. And that also stood out in the survey as well as their biggest challenge and what they want more from their relationships or otherwise.
Definitely. And even out of that conversation, we can ask ourselves, how can we, not you or I, but the masses, how can we as a family, as a society, create that safe space for them to really open up and be heard, without being judgmental? How
Yes.
can we?
Yes. So that skill of listening to understand is important. And so this is what I'm drawing from the responses of the survey. If there is a communication gap and when we know we speak out, we know we state what is wrong, but are we reaching them? Are we listening sufficiently to understand and ensure that the platform, whatever it is, whether it's on WhatsApp, we know you use so much mediums to communicate now, are we reaching and are we listening to understand, was what stood out coming out of that question. Yes.
Definitely. And even we need to differentiate as well. Sometimes we say we are listening, but listening with our undivided attention as well.
Attention.
because
Yes.
sometimes we may be listening, and I think a lot of the times the devices have a lot to contribute into that factor. We are listening, but we're texting, we're not giving our undivided attention. So it's like, yeah, you're speaking, I'm hearing you. You're speaking, I'm hearing you, but then I am not showing much of a concern. So for them, this is where the communication really starts to become that problem. And it would encourage them to shut in more than even opening up and feeling, that need to, okay, let me have a one-on-one conversation. Let me feel like I'm getting the 100% support that I'm looking for, not just from a partner, but maybe from a dad, from an uncle, or even a colleague on a whole.
Yes, yes. So sometimes we believe emotions and emotions, we draw it and we ensure that women get those hugs and, women are spoken to in a different way because, again, it is referred that women are social beings and they may require, that more love, care, and attention. And I think that is where we lose our male figures in society because we deny them that attention, the care, the level grounded communication platform where there is dialogue and not arguments, where there is discussion and not discourse that causes one person to, trample on the other's feelings or emotion. And of course, men are more masculine and they tend to, just because of their physique, may dominate, and that in itself could distort the communication. So again, another important aspect. Two other areas that I want to touch on is when the question was asked, what is the number one turn on for you in a woman? When the men were asked that, they said they were looking for good character. One of the questions, one of the selections in there was whether they were looking for a fun, outgoing person, whether they were looking for somebody who was ambitious or a go-getter, or were you looking for looks or someone who listens? Believe you me, only 4% of men indicated they go for looks. Predominantly, good character was what stood out for them. Yes. So that is, a result that women listening or women and men listening, if this at all, aligns with what you're thinking, then this is what the survey is saying. Yes. So people are looking for a good character, not the looks, the lashes, the hair, and the things we spend so much time doing, our outward appearance and not taking care of our internal, physical appearance tends to dominate what we do or present to men. And that is not necessarily what they're looking for. Again, that came out in the survey. And the number one turnoff that what stood out was men felt disrespected. And it's very broad. It could be taken in various spectrums. But disrespect and a bad character was what stood out as what is a turnoff and what they're not looking for in their partners or in women in general. Yes.
Definitely. And even maybe my point on that is well, choosing respect over all those outward appearances as well. And I think a lot of the times it come across where we do this thing seeking for, outside validation. How do I look with my head down or my nails?
Yes. Hmm.
And then we tend to not pay full attention to what's happening in house, our own
Yes.
affairs as well.
Mhm.
And these now tend to stem problems from there because the persons involved would now feel some sort of isolation as well. And they would now look for somebody to vent to.
Yes.
It becomes a huge problem.
Yes, it is. And then we don't realize how these little things, I mean, I'm just touching the surface on what the results are saying. I haven't fully analyzed it, or I'm not going to write a paper on it. However, it gives an indication because I mean, the demographic or the respondents was a wide cross section of persons. It didn't identify age, but predominantly who the survey was shared with is, they were above 18, and I think between a 18 to 50-year-old gap, not gap, sorry, but a range. And so it can contribute to an answer towards what men want coming out of this survey. Yes.
Definitely. And I think even our discussion as well should propel persons who are actually listening to foster that little change. If it's to
Yes.
broaden the communication gap, if it is paying attention, to the little things, sometimes they do keep themselves in isolation
Yes.
based on whatever it is that they're going through as well. And we should be able to see those little signals and stuff. So I'm going to maybe ask you in your opinion, what are the signs, that they show, to indicate that, look, I am really going through something. I have really reached rock bottom. Who can I speak to?
The signs and symptoms, and if you look at it on the surface, people tend to retract from their normal way of the normal things that they do. Social settings, you may see display symptoms can be where they increase their drinking, they reduce their time spent at home, reduce the time spent with their partner. They find other outlets. And again, if we focus on the response from the question where they brush it off, they really brush it off and they tend to close themselves off. And that happens in both men and women. You get isolation and you realize certain symptoms that the person is not behaving in their normal way. This is where you spark a conversation. It can be the person wants to discuss something, they're actually going through a stress or depression, and just mere conversations for men and women could cause persons to not wanting to use the word vent, but to disclose in a safe space what they're going through. And I mean, we see it through the suicide rates in on island and worldwide globally. It's more men, and this is known. And maybe it contributes to the fact that they do not express themselves. They do not utilize the same avenues that are afforded to women. They don't think there is a need because boys are not supposed to cry. Boys are not supposed to express emotions. Boys are not allowed to play with dolls. And they grow up in those households thinking that this is a girlish thing and women cry and women play with dolls, women supposed to take care of the household. And mothers, they don't teach their boys to treat women right. And so helping in the household becomes an isolated chore of a woman. Taking care of the children becomes again predominantly a woman. But we've shifted in society and we're not shifting with the world. And some people remain in that mindset. And so when men have those responsibilities, they're unable to function in them. So that in itself is another issue all by itself, yes. So how you were raised and what you're told and the fact that you cannot express or cry or be emotional about something can contribute to the fact that men don't express themselves.
Which
Right,
is
in the right places, that is.
which is yes, definitely so. Conversations I've had before, men tend to believe they do not have a strong support system for them.
Yes. They believe that, and if you view the way we operate within our communities, even in an office space, even in a work environment, you see that there's support for women. Somebody pass away, and the condolences, that sort of a thing, you find it gravitates to women, not all the time, but it does. And there is no avenue or vivid support system, I should say, that gives the man that freedom, or he's encouraged to take up those avenues to deal with the emotion, because emotion is not gender specific. I mean, frustration, hate, anger, being anxious, these are not isolated or emotions only expressed by women. I don't understand too why the thought is happy and all of the good emotions sort of men could express, but the other ones, sadness, grief, being anxious, expressing, their emotion about something, it's almost as if it's gender specific, and that should not be. Everyone can feel sad and everyone can be happy and people can be at their highs and lows. But for men, it's somehow not accepted. And that from society could really be a contributing factor to how men are operating.
which is true. And even to that as well, they tend to bottle so many things inside. And believe it or not, some of them would commit suicide, as a matter of
Yes,
fact.
yes.
So we're encouraging persons to communicate openly how you feel. Find someone you trust. Find
Trust. Yes,
a group. Join a mentorship um, club or group if you have to. Reach out to some family member. You know you trust. That's the most important word. You trust, and then just share whatever it is that you're going through. And a lot of the times when they tend to be going through that specific scenario, honestly thinking that turning to the bars and consuming the alcohol
yes, yes,
actually solves the problem, but it
yes.
worsens
It
it.
doesn't take away the problem, and that is the exact point I just noted.
Yes,
So there are no, you would get women's group, women's support group. You know there are avenues for women that they can tap into, but for men they're left with the bars, they're left with a domino table, and that in itself is a platform. It's just that it's not utilized. So men use these bars and these domino tables to degrade women in some cases. It's not meaningful conversations where they come and talk about something they're going through. And, around that circle of the domino game, they could have a lively discussion, a meaningful one that allows him to go back home and recognize the problem or the issue that he's going through. But instead, you walk out of an argument, you leave home because, men tend to do that, and they seek an avenue as in a bar or a domino table, and they don't express themselves. It might just be a brush off emotion like, moi from Salah, moi ma fessa, ma. But then there's never the avenue where around that domino table, even during the game, they have a meaningful discussion that can provide him, because it's a support system that in itself can provide him with a means to return home. And you know how your partner can tell you, but gasa ou pati pou fè sa. Pite tout sa fè lot bagay. Pite tout sa bay madame la josa la. Pa vini bwe wamodi ya. Because there are solutions in these mere social conversations. But again, we don't take those approaches because it is not a man thing to do.
yeah,
Very, very unfortunate. Yes.
definitely. And even adding to that as well, the circles, the influence, because you could be influenced, whether it's positive or negative as well.
Yes.
So
Yes.
you need to, as much as possible, circle yourself with your positive friends that would not have you
Yes.
get to the bars
Those,
and
yeah, yeah,
get drowned in your sorrows for sure, but then go home and talk it out,
yeah.
refer them to someone who is able to be a mentor, an advocate, to at least set them on the right path as well.
Yes. And you need again in your friends circles, in your colleague circles, in your co-worker circles. We all have those circles. But you need to know when to tap into what. There are people that you would socialize with, and generally you would not go and disclose a matter or situation that's affecting you. Because of course you know how men can be in terms of their words, their taunting, and that in itself can throw you into a deeper depression or stress situation. And so you need to know where and who are the support system. Do I go to the priest? Do I go to counseling? And then we label these avenues as mwah, mafesa. You go to the priest, you go and confess. Some people don't believe in that avenue, but it is a means of addressing issues. And so you need to be able to always have a system that works for you. You have a community group you could go to. It might be your church choir, it might be your pastor, your priest, it might be your co-worker circle. You need to know where to go. And in some cases, it might be your partner. But if you do not have those trust, respectful relationships, again, men tend to fall out of that and go to the bar and those domino tables or social settings to hype them, give them that immediate release. The fact of the matter is alcohol subsides and the pain and the issue remains. Yes.
Yes, it does. We have a comment, I believe, from Marcia Innocent. As women, we need to learn to communicate with our sons as openly as we do with our daughters. They have emotions and feelings like us women.
Yes.
which is true. And
And
of course,
which is very true, and that brings us to the conversation. So girls are taught, I mean, even in the movies you see in the UK, girls are taught etiquette, and in these Indian societies the girls are prepared for marriage. In our regional, across the region and the Caribbean, once you reach 16, some mothers tell you you have to go and marry your sister, and you have to go and marry your cousin, and you have to go and marry your aunt. And that is
Relevant talk shows, and we heard you. 88.5 Super FM presents House Guest, a brand new, fresh fortnightly feature airing at 10 a.m. House Guest will showcase a cadre of professionals from doctors and entrepreneurs to the next door friendly neighbor. So tune in as we network the community with a platform for open, frank, and informative discussion. Only on Super FM, your community radio station.
Casualty 911, 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. with the consultant. Health is not merely the absence of diseases. It is your social, economic, physical, spiritual, and mental well-being. Just imagine you on 88.5 Super FM, talking, questioning, sharing your experience, information, education, entertainment, news, instructions, advice on diabetes, high blood pressure, strokes, menopause, AIDS, pregnancy, sex.
Sex? Did you say sex?
As prescribed, take your medication, exercise, and diet. On 88.5 Super FM, tell a friend, call your neighbor. Casualty 911 is on.
88.5 Super FM presents Let's Connect every Tuesday from 5:30 p.m. with your host, Reniata D'Souza. Also live on Facebook. Be sure to tune in as we present you with updates on local activities, events, businesses, initiatives, and upcoming opportunities for all. Let's connect every Tuesday right here on Super FM and online. Don't miss it.
And of course, to continue our conversation, what men want, I just need to quickly apologize yet for another interruption with our broadcast. Welcome back to you, Yvonne.
thank you for that.
As we were just discussing, based on the comment that we received as women, we need to learn to communicate with our sons as openly as we do with our daughters. They have emotions and feelings like us women. And the conversation definitely has been, about our men and the support. And we do not need to cast blame on them or even ridicule them when they decide to show emotions, even by maybe shedding a tear and so forth. And even earlier on, you touched on men are entitled to be loved, to be hugged, to be kissed as well. And we tend to believe it's only through intimacy, like sexual affiliations, that persons can definitely show love, but then no, this is beyond that as well. A hug. Yes, we tend to do the day-to-day texting, but then it doesn't equate to after a long day and you get to the house and not just your partner, but then your kids as well. You reach out, can I have a hug? How was your day today?
Yeah, so that emotional neglect, I would call it, causes. And if you imagine you receiving a hug and how it makes you feel, that welcoming hug, that physical touch, that encouragement, tap on the shoulder, you did well, that in itself contributes to the well-being of anyone. And so if you look at it just through that lens, you would understand why it is important. And I was surprised to see when the men were asked, what is your main love language? And they indicated that it was quality time and physical touch. That to me was surprising. Apart from, I mean, there are 5 love languages. You would have thought men would not be concerned with that. Again, that was my perception of out there, men don't care about that. And we hear it, we feel that way. But again, seeing the zooming in on the results from that survey, that stood out for me because we tend to think that they don't need that masculine nature. They are sort of self-loved, you do your own thing and this is a girly thing, this is a woman thing, but no. And if the men are calling for it and answering the question what men want, that should be one of the things added to your list, ladies. Physical touch, quality time. And physical touch, as you rightfully said, Sabrina, it's not just sexual, the need to feel heard, the need to be heard, the need to be understood because they have categorized and what stood out for them is disrespect. And in some cases, we might be coming out to have a discussion, but the discussion turns into an argument, and you know what happens from there. And men tend not to be able to operate in those avenues or those platforms because, again, it's a turnoff. So, we women, how we talk to our boys, and even encouraging them to harness their emotions, express their emotions, feel what they're feeling, if we train our boys and grow them into men with those little tidbits you're hearing here today, can help cause that shift in how men operate and treat women as well. Yeah,
Definitely.
how women would say, he has a mother, he has a sister. Why is he treating her that way? We hear these comments all the time. But then we need to answer that question too. As mothers, what do we tell our boys to do? How do we train them up? It's important. Yes.
I'm really happy you touch on how do we train our boys as well, and it has a lot to do with what we're witnessing now in society as well. I think a lot of the pressures, a lot of the delinquency as well, and sadly, the majority of them are actually dying by the guns and involving in gangs as well. And it's sad. It stems from the home, and sometimes we may not necessarily want to believe it. We blame the politicians, we blame the next door neighbor as well. But then just stand right in front of the mirror and take a look at who is responsible too.
Yeah, the reflection most times is ours. Ours as parents, mothers or fathers. It is taught the boys how we ensure that the girls have a nice, comfortable room or place to sleep. But the boys, it's on the chair. And if everybody's in the living room watching TV, what are you telling him? He does not have a space and he's going to go on the block. He finds himself on the block where he's loved and supported, and people may think that, no, what am I talking about, love and supported? Yes, his partners love him, they check on him. Yo, where you today, how I see you? That is somebody checking in on you, and you going to be committed to that person, that group. These people are checking for you, my G, my dog. Whether they're speaking it through that language, there is a level of care, there's a level of attention, and there's a level of love. And the respect factor comes in. When men operate, you know who's in charge, and they offer each other that respect. They jam each other. They touch their chests to solidify their love. But when they're in home or in places in the workplace, they don't have that. And so, this is where the breakdown comes. Sometimes we neglect seeing it. And so, of course, I will die for this person and, be in this gang and nobody touches anybody. That's a level of respect. That's a level of trust. Why is it in society it's so easy for men to gravitate to the block in those gangs and be so loyal? Why? That also is an important question. So, do we throw our men out of the house? That is our boys, the uncles, the fathers, the grandfathers, our partners. Do we throw them out? Do we send them out in the community? And do we cause them to be in, our local palace, a PAMI resort? And the PAMI resort provides the love, the care, the attention, and the sort of things that they want that they're not getting from wherever it is they reside or work. Yeah.
Which is true. So, from this conversation as well, we need to look for ways and means to empower our young men as well to show some love, show some appreciation, and even the three words, how powerful it can be. I love you. You know, they need to hear it
Yes.
coming from us as well, brothers or sisters, partners. They need to hear, I love you. Not just I love you because of such, but then openly, just I love you genuinely, you know. It can make their day. Sometimes we never know what they might be going through, you know, they're at their wits' end. And just hearing those three words at that time might do wonders for them.
Yeah, and the thing is, social media has given us this platform to express our emotions through emojis. So you send out, a heart. You send out, these hugs, and we use the emojis, but we don't do it for physical touch. So it's expressed, but feeling something and hearing something is so different with the voice and physical touch than an emoji sent out through the social media platform. So social media is taking us away from conversations. So a husband and wife, a partner, mother, daughter, brother, uncle, whichever the relationship combination, you do the talking on WhatsApp. So there's a problem in the house, and there's an exchange during the day on social media, and you walk back into that household thinking that it's addressed. But no, it's not. You have not, after that conversation, close off the matter by touching and saying, you know what, I'm really sorry. I really love you, but what you did this morning or what you did yesterday, it upset me. And you accept the emotion of what happened, and you move on into a different emotion of happy and acceptance or excitement. But no, we use social media to take care of the issue because I want to wear that woman or that man knit. And again, if you use that sort of language, you know what comes after it. The communication gap will obviously follow. Yes.
And I'm really happy you spoke of that point as well. We need to, again, just brush off, you know, those devices, and we need to have family time. We need to have proper structure and even routine as well. You find sometimes on your day to day, you get home as well, and there's no conversation. The devices have replaced, you know, the true meaning of family, the substance, and all of that sort of thingy. So we're asking you to reroute, you know, that whole home operation as well, and make the time. If it's a no device Monday or Tuesday, let's have a conversation. Let's have dinner together. Let's watch a movie together. You know, let's
We've
let's have those fun
the
activities.
phones and social media has taken that away. And I'm so happy you mentioned that. And I've also noted it because the interactive discussion is going to happen tonight with persons who would have responded directly in the survey, both men and women. I have 57 respondents from women and men, just about 46 under the 50. But seemingly, they are all eager to hear the results, see the results for themselves. And we're going to go into this live interactive discussion. But it's important that we identify what that quality time is. No device Monday, family Wednesday, movie Wednesday, things like that. The boys on the block will probably be more willing to come home to a movie. You have a nice, family dinner, and people are looking forward. If everybody is loosely doing what they want in that household or family or partnership, when you get home, everybody's individually on 2 3 devices. They've not divorced themselves from their day of work. So the mother is still finishing a report, daddy is somewhere in the back on his phone, and everybody is doing anything that you don't have that quality time, and that takes away, it contributes to the breakdown in our society. So, even looking at the discussion on what men want in terms of in the household, that is important. What men want in relationship, that is important. What men want in the workspace, that is important. Why are the women given priority? Why when it's time to lift something, lift furniture, that man in the corner cubicle that you haven't said good morning to can move it. Why are you calling him now to move the fridge or move a heavy piece of equipment? But when it's time to recognize women for something else, the women are called, the women are given there's cake or chocolate to be shared. You call the lady to cut the cake. And sometimes we forget that he might need a piece of cake too. Simple things like that is what I'm talking about. So what we men want, both genders equally require care, love, and attention, quality time. Men specifically, because it's Men Month, we've spoken about a lot of things. But I think if we circle back to what obtained, and if it works for you, and in your relationship, in your household, in your workship, in whatever ship you sail in, if you men in your mind supposed to be providers, allow them to provide. If men are supposed to be leaders, allow them to lead. If men are supposed, you want your man to be a nurturer and you want to switch roles, allow him to nurture. We cannot, as women, want our cake, eat it too, want to be heard. And when it comes to emotions, we are the emotional dolls of, all of this. And sometimes, and I'm a woman and I'm saying it, we play victim, and the men are seen as the villains, unfortunately. But they too are victims in some situations. So we have to be mindful of that.
True. How do you believe more women can become, allies in supporting men's growth and especially mental health, which has become a very serious issue?
So on the spectrum of mental health, I think women, because we're more mindful, we're more mindful of things along health and wellness, we need to tag our partners with us. Schedule for them as well. If you realize there is an issue, because we spoke about some of the symptoms, I mean, Google can become our best friend to find the answers we want. You notice something different in the person's character, in the person's approach, consider doing pair counseling, the partnership counseling. Let's go talk to the priest. Maybe you all are, frequent church goers, and you probably know somebody in the community who the man looks up to. It can be a police officer. It can be just a role model or an ambassador in the community. You could, invite the pastor over for dinner. Invite that friend over. You know who your partner or your uncle or nephew will listen to. Invite the person over for drinks. Invite the person over for dinner. Make it a conversation. And you could also, in that conversation or setting, leave him and him to do that discussion. Excuse yourself. So sometimes we have to craftily, in an innovative way, find the ways. And as women, we good with things like that. And so if you recognize that in your son, in your nephew, in a partner, in an uncle or father, their character, their approach, their normal behavior has changed, be creative and find a way to get them to that wellness place again. And like I said, you could schedule those visits to the doctor, make it a family month for our doctor checkups, things like that. Simple things like that can work. Yes.
Thank you so much for that. It is now our 3 minutes moving up to the hour of 11 a.m. In Surface Solution, of course, the Eastern Caribbean. It's been a very interesting conversation, thought provoking as well. And we're hoping that all those of you who actually listen can take a bite from what we've said here and try to, apply it to your day to day. And you may see that sort of a little change whatsoever as well. Um, in all of that, we have Caroline Bob. Good morning. Wishing all my Suffrey family and friends a blessed weekend. And of course, we extend the very same to you as well. A familiar voice. We have Miss Yvonne Edwin here with us. And of course, sharing some light on our men, what do they want. We have to be more keen, have a listening ear, pay attention to, and even we speak of those things as well. What would you say are like the common, red flags to like say, okay, that's enough is enough?
You're asking in terms of when do you say enough is enough?
Yes.
When do you say enough? Imagine there is a question in the survey that help persons to zoom in on when would you walk away. So that was a specific question. When would you walk away? Would it be on the first red flag, by the third red flag, or do you stay and work it out? Or there was a fourth option. But predominantly, even the men and in the women's survey, most persons seem to be saying that they stay. They don't move on the first red flag. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, because sometimes you give chance to certain situations. I don't think for the response of that question, it should be just taken, in isolation. It really can be vary in terms of situations, but predominantly the results showed that persons seem to be walking away after a third occurrence. That seemed to be the majority vote. Almost 80% of the men would have indicated that they would walk away after a third indication. So there is some level of empathy and sympathy being expressed on their end, that they don't just up and run once a situation arises. But again, this is a general broad response, because different situation may merit you walking away immediately. Somebody raises their hand on you, somebody's abusive, bad behavior, that sort of thing. Everybody principles and morals might be different, and so I cannot just voice here and say that you should leave immediately. But from the survey results, people seem to be going after the third occurrence of something, which I think in general you could say it's a reasonable take, because we always say give and take. You need to give and take in certain situations. So, and then there might be one-off situation, somebody do something, you wouldn't just walk away or close off a relationship with you and your son because he found himself on the wrong side of the law. You won't just close off a relationship with your uncle because he's now into drugs or drinking and so forth. You would try your best in efforts, different ways, to try to get the person out of this. And maybe after the third attempt, you would say enough is enough. So that's how I would answer that question, because different strokes for different folks.
Yes. Also, as we were looking at red flags as well, when it comes to relationships, especially those that are abusive as well, some persons are willing to seek counseling and work it out as well. And even for us women, we tend to believe he loves me. This is how he expresses his love, by hitting me. I truly do not believe or support it.
So that is a red flag that does not require you to wait around and see. Because
Definitely.
around for the second or third time might be fatal. And so in a situation like that, you leave in the first instance. But like I said, every situation is different. And what you shouldn't do, I would say and add, is make excuses for the behavior of someone else. Let the person indicate their reasoning, but not you sitting there and say, no, he loves me, and that shouldn't have happened. But when we go into that tone and start encouraging the situation, that's where it becomes very dangerous. Allow the person to come with a genuine apology and indicate why, and you will decipher in that scenario if it's workable for you. But I think it becomes a bad precedent once you've gone through abuse or ill treatment and you're the one or the spokesperson for that person's behavior. That in itself is a no-no.
Okay. What's next for Toastmasters? Any upcoming events or even outreach activities really to foster everything that has been said here today?
So we're going to continue with our initiative throughout the month. Men's Day is next week, Wednesday, the 19th of November. However, we have our normal Toastmasters meeting, which is on Tuesdays. So the 18th, ahead of Men's Day, we have a men-infused meeting where our men will lead and take the charge and perform the roles and deliver speeches. As I told you from the start, Toastmasters teaches communication and leadership. We continue with our sensitization program, trying to build on our membership. So avenues like speaking out in the public on the radio stations provides your listeners with another avenue to develop for their personal growth. In Toastmasters, there's just so many benefits. We need a separate program to, talk about all of the benefits of Toastmasters. But in a nutshell, it builds on your communication, all aspects. How you deliver, whether it's on radio, whether it's to your partner, how you are precise, with your reasoning. Again, you would have to research a topic and you would come with your findings and you make your presentations. So every speech is unique. Each speech would require different objectives, But in a nutshell, your communication, delivery, and all aspects of that is what is taught and practiced in a Toastmasters meeting. Not forgetting the leadership component. You get to lead, you get to practice leadership skills that are lifelong beneficial to anyone who becomes a Toastmaster. There are 4 clubs on island. Public Service Toastmasters is one of those 4 clubs, but all of the club teaches from the International Toastmasters platform. They teach the same thing. There are various pathways that are similar to what we can maybe understand as different course lines that you could sign up for, but the selection will be yours predominantly. And there is no lecture or teacher that would be at you to complete a speech or complete a project. What you would have is a mentor. So a mentor is a sign. Again, we're speaking about men. If you come into Toastmasters, you can develop your leadership charge, how to do certain things, how to speak, how to communicate, how to soften your approach in delivering a message. So again, each speech objective helps with that. A perfect avenue for men, a perfect avenue for persons with a lot of time on their hands, a perfect avenue for a student leaving school, unknown what you want to do. Why it is? It's because it's going to provide you with lifelong skills that you could take and use everywhere. So Toastmasters is the answer.
Thank you so much for that. We have Bryson Stackert Solange. Good morning to you as well. So, I would love to keep you here and, of course, continue this conversation. But like you said, we'll definitely
Do it.
have a full
Yeah,
way we can do so.
yeah.
Um, what's one message you'd like to leave with our audience? I mean, about communication, understanding, empathy between men and women, for sure. Because again, like you did say earlier on, sometimes we act as the victims when we're not, you know.
When we're not. So the message I would want to leave out there for men who are listening, I believe each man has a place, whether it's in the workplace, household, or in society. They have a key role to play and one that requires a partnership. As much as it's indicated from the survey that communication seemed to be the gap, I would I want to empower the men to speak out. Express yourself, recognize your emotions. And if you were taught that men are not to cry, men are not to do the long list of things your mother or society poses on you, I want to be the first to encourage you and tell you that emotions are not gender specific. Emotions are things that we feel every day, and we need to know when and how to deal with them. And if you feel unloved, I want to send out and tell anybody who is listening, the world loves you, God loves you, and that is all you really need. Trust in Him, trust in what you believe, and you will pull through whatever situation you might currently be in. But I think the fundamental thing for men is to start expressing themselves and recognizing their emotions.
Definitely. Someone did say we need her as a returning guest. And yes, I have agreed to as well.
Thank you so much for that. So thank you. And we will be in contact. And of course, we could do the program again. We can, again, it's throughout the month. We have another radio station that we will be on talking about similar topic, exploring the results analysis. And if anyone is keen on joining, I could send a link to you and you could share it with your audience. We will be on at 6:45. We have 3 male speakers, 1 person in psychology, 2 of our other Toastmasters will be on the panel this evening, and it's a live interactive discussion on this topic, what we men want. Thank you again, and to your listeners, have a wonderful day.
Thank you as well. And it's immense pleasure to have you here as well. Thank you. Thank you so, so much. Do have yourself a blessed day as well. Take
You
care.
thank you so much. Thanks. Thanks, Sufre.